Hey everyone, this is Matt with Surf City TCG. If you're new to my channel, I specialize in EDH/Commander content for bracket 3, top of the line, optimized Commander decks, typically with no infinite combos. Today's coaching session is different than the others I've posted in that we're primarily going to be focusing on advanced deck building techniques using EDH Rex, using Scryfall, still probably using those two resources, but in more advanced manners, and to find very specific things or potentially exclude specific things from your search. If you haven't already checked out my video series on how to build a commander deck completely from scratch, starting from nothing, that would be a very good place to start. I'm going to be skipping over a lot of the fundamentals that I covered in those videos because Dave, I already know we've had a coaching session previously and I know he's already a good deck builder, so we're going to be skipping some of the foundational stuff and covering some more advanced topics here. So if you feel like you're getting a little bit lost with this video, definitely recommend you check out the series. It's a pretty long one, but there's timestamps throughout. It's all useful, I think, for both new and expert players alike. There's a lot of tips in there, basically everything I know, and all the time I spend building a deck is put into that video series. It was really a labor of love to create it, and I don't feel like it's necessarily gotten as many views as I've expected. So check that out, please. I'll link the whole series here and leave comments. Let me know if it was helpful for you. I don't get a ton of comments. I love all the comments I get, even if they don't say anything like major, just like hi, heart, whatever it is. Like the more likes and the more comments I get, the better, because that helps spread my channel out to others. And if you're enjoying my content, that helps me keep going. So today's coaching session is going to be all about deck building, very advanced style, and we'll be covering a new commander from Avatar, Iroh Grand Lotus, but not building it necessarily in the way that you would expect, hence the need for these advanced deck building techniques. Rather than me trying to paraphrase, I'll just have Dave explain to you what he was looking for in this coaching session. If this is something that you would be interested in, you can contact me directly on Discord. My handle there is SurfCityTCG, or the link to my Discord is in the video description and comments below. Alternatively, check out my Patreon for more info on how to book one of these sessions. So without further ado, here it is. Enjoy.
Hello.
Hey, Dave.
Hey, how's it going?
Going well. How are you?
Yeah, not bad. Yeah, have a nice relaxing weekend so far, so I can't complain.
Excellent. Me too. I put together a rough agenda here. We might try to flex on this a little bit. But why don't you start off by just telling me about what your idea was, just real quick, and then we'll get right into it.
Yeah, sure. So I usually like, the decks I've recently liked are the spell slinging style. So they often have a lot of instants, a lot of sorceries, which is consistent with this commander. But I find they often don't have much board presence, and they kind of win out of nowhere a little bit. And when I'm building decks more generally, I find if I am sticking to the optimal sort of bracket 3 way to build it, it's relatively easy in that you have EDH rec resources, you
Yeah.
have Reddit, Google, and so on. But if I try and build something a bit more off the beaten track, so in this case, I wanted to work on a deck that's got a lot more creatures, a lot more board presence. Then it becomes a lot harder because there just aren't those same, I guess, easily accessible resources, and probably requires a better understanding of deck building. And so this commander looked quite interesting and clearly focused on sort of instants and sorceries, just given the text.
Yep.
But I thought it would be a good experiment to see, I guess, how we can take it in a slightly different direction, and then I could potentially apply that to other decks. And as I mentioned, I've built quite a few mono red decks, but
Yep.
that's it really. I haven't really built green or blue decks, so I thought it'd be interesting to
Do you have a vision in
diversify it.
your mind about like how this deck would win? Like what's the typical way you're winning on the turn that you win in your
Yeah,
in your
so
mind?
what I was thinking, I mean, the way, if I was to build it optimally, it would be like a spell slinger style. So you storm off, you cast a bunch of spells with
Right.
pingers or like big mana, like multiple, copying rituals or something, like very similar to my current like spell slingery type commanders.
Yep.
But I thought because it has because this commander, has green in the color identity in particular, like it also gives access to a lot of potential creatures.
Hmm.
So there might be, something where you can either go wide with creatures or with tokens or something like that,
Hmm.
and then maybe use the instants and sorceries to. I don't know what spells exist is part of the issue because
Hmm.
I don't have as much knowledge of especially green and blue, but then maybe using those instants and sorceries to kind of buff up those creatures, and then you could cast it again potentially twice in a turn, for example, like
Yep.
cast a spell then cast it again from the graveyard. And so that might be like a way that, even though probably the best thing is this like kind of spell slingery type build, something that has a lot more creatures or a lot more tokens or something like that could, in
Yep.
theory, with the right build, potentially work.
So when you're saying all this to me, what I immediately think of are commanders like Elsha of the Infinite, or I think there's various Jeskai commanders that really do exactly what you're describing, which is make a huge board, go wide, and then kind of pump all of those things. Or I think there was an Otter card that was in
The
Bloomburrow.
Bria, the
It,
prowess one.
exactly. So
Yeah.
is that sort of the idea that you had, but with this, with Iroh as the commander? Is that, am I
Yeah,
understanding
it
correctly?
could be. I mean, I would say, I'm not so restricted. It's more, I guess, about just trying to build something a bit different.
Yeah. No, cool.
But yes, like something like that, would make sense. But it wouldn't have to be that. The synergies could be other
Okay.
creature synergies
Just wanted to
from
make
other.
sure that we're on the same page, like in terms
Yeah,
of the idea.
yeah.
Pardon. So I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think this is a really cool idea. So let's just go over quickly the agenda I have out listed here. Does this all look reasonable to you? Is there anything you want to emphasize or de-emphasize?
No, that looks good.
Okay, cool. Well, let's jump right
And
into it.
I think as I said before as well, if we don't finish the deck, that's not a problem. Like I'm obviously aware of your time as well. It's more just about kind of the process so that I can apply it to my existing decks and future decks.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. So thank you for the clarity with that. So let's get right into it. So I've set up a deck list here, but we don't have anything yet. So I think what I want to do, hold on a second. So now that we understand what we want to do, I think the important thing and the way I would get started if I were doing something like this is and this is why I asked you ahead of time, like, is there a card specifically that inspired this idea, or a card that you feel like is going to make the deck no matter what? Because then we can use that as the starting point. But since you didn't have one, that's fine. Let's just, I think I want to start off by using the EDH Rex API anyway, because what I think the easiest way to go about this is to add the cards that we feel like are going to be core to this deck. And
Yeah.
before we even get into that, let's just talk about what the commander does. I don't want to spend forever on this and do like a whole SWOT analysis like I would normally do, because I think you already have those skills and that's something that you're pretty adept at already. But I do think it's worth reading through what the commander does just so we're on the same page and we don't miss anything if you've thought of things that I haven't, and vice versa. So
Yeah.
Iroh is Iroh Grand Lotus. Am I saying it right? Is it Iroh? Do you know? Is it
Uh,
Iroh?
I think it's Iroh. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
I did watch the anime, but it's so long ago.
Okay, I haven't actually seen it, so if there's something about it that makes sense or doesn't make sense, like thematically, just let me
Yeah.
know. But if
Sure.
you don't care about that, then whatever. So, Iroh's 6 mana, first of all, like that's the thing we need to make note of immediately, because a 6 mana commander has inherently huge risks and problems and challenges associated with it, because as I'm sure you know, if your 6 mana commander dies or is countered, like it's pretty devastating, because now he cost
Yeah.
8 and it's just like, oh my gosh, can I even cast him again this entire game? So 6 mana, big problem potentially, but obviously like a huge payoff, or at least that's what I would expect. 5/5, decent sized body, but nothing crazy. Firebending 2, and we don't get the reminder text here because he's got a lot of other text, but Firebending 2 means when this creature attacks, he has an attack trigger to create 2 red mana that lasts only until the end of combat. So you won't get it in your main phase unless you have a way to store it up. meaning you have to spend it on an instant or it kind of goes away, or activated ability or whatever. During your
Yeah.
turn, each non-lesson, and let's talk about what lessons are. They aren't really anything. They're just a type, a subtype of instants and sorceries. So if you're watching this and you're like, what's a lesson? It's not anything. It's just like some cards say that they're lessons and that's it. It doesn't inherently mean anything. During your turn, each non-lesson instant and sorcery in your graveyard has flashback. Okay, so all of your spells on your turn only have flashback equal to their mana cost. And lessons in your graveyard also have flashback for 1 generic mana. So your lessons can be cast for 1. All of your non-lessons could be cast for either 1 or... No, I'm sorry. Your lessons could be cast for 1, or you could pay the full price for them if you want, I guess. I don't think there's often a reason you'd want to do that, but you might, who knows. And then your regular spells that aren't lessons can be flashed back for their mana cost. So very powerful ability. It's a little unfortunate that you could only do it during your turn, but I think that lends to what you're trying to do, which is like create a board presence, have the spells you cast and the spells you sling, so to speak, do something active for you, like create creatures and or pump them up. Now, when I think of, so any things I missed about what this commander does, or any specific things you wanted to note?
No, I think you covered it.
Okay, so I guess the first thing I think of is how are we gonna, like, what's the plan here? Like, what is our like game looking like, and how, like, very big picture. And what I think when I see a 6-mana commander that includes green is, well, we need a ton of ramp, right? Like, this has to be a deck with a lot of ramp. And given that we want to be casting instants and sorceries, I already lean toward playing land ramp in green. I think it is the best type of ramp in bracket 3 especially, and this is a bracket 3 deck. Let's quickly go over the notes that you gave about what the goals are for this deck. Pet cards and pet peeve cards, you didn't have any specifically. You said any budget, just didn't want to play Gaia's Cradle, which is fine. I don't think we would anyway in this deck, honestly, because we have access to 3 colors, which means given this is bracket 3, we were on around 3 game changers max. Gaia's Cradle is not going to make the cut, even in the most optimized deck, in my opinion. For this commander, well, actually, I don't know. Now that I think about it, like, we are going to be going wide, so Cradle could make sense, but I think there are plenty of other good game changers we could run. Bracket 3 and Infinites, no. So all good there. Just wanted to level set. So the reason I'm asking is like what the plan is. I think we want to figure out some core cards that we're going to be playing no matter what. And I think the first ones I think of are green ramp spells. So I, have some packages like best green ramp, but I don't want to just default to using this because this is not something that you necessarily have. But just so you know, I think this is a really great way to set up your deck building for the future. Is if there are like green ramp spells that you always want to be playing if you're running green, you can create a package, and then it's a really easy way to get started. It's just like add this package and be like, okay, this is a great starting point. But we're not going to do that. So instead, what I want to do is add some stuff using the Scryfield tagger. And if you're unfamiliar, I think, Dave, you know what the Scryfield tagger is, but if you're unfamiliar, the tagger is a crowdsourced, just like you would see, like, for example, we're going to play Sol Ring, right? Because Sol Ring is a good card. And if we go to my types and tags, I've added these myself. We could see I have this under mana ramp. But if we didn't have any tags set up, like we were brand new to Moxfield, we can search up Sol Ring here, click on one of them, and see what the tags are for Sol Ring. So it's a mana rock. It has all these other tags, but mana rock is probably the primary one we would want to use. But also ramp is a good one, right? So I think if we're looking for spells, like specifically instants and sorceries that ramp, we could just use the Scryfall tagger in combination with the advanced search here. So we can say O tag, which is how we search for these tags. It's stands for Oracle tag. We want to say ramp. And then I think we want to see just instants and sorceries for now. This will exclude like mana rocks and stuff, which I think we want to avoid running mana rocks in green decks typically because they're more vulnerable to removal, and land ramp is just, it's pretty hard to punish someone who's just ramping with land because bracket 3 automatically says precludes you from playing mass land destruction or denial. So I think the way to take advantage of that is just play a bunch of ramp, right? Like, have you seen landfall strategies go ham like in bracket 3 deck? Every game, right?
Yeah.
Like you can't do anything about it except try to kill that player. So I think that's the plan here. Let's ramp as much as we can. We're going to play Soul Ring because it's too good. But other than that, probably avoid artifact mana. So we want to look for stuff with the tag ramp, type instant or type sorcery. And then I'm not going to type this again in the future because I have this defaulting automatically via my Mox field settings. But if you didn't, then adding this order EDH rec is going to show us the most popular cards first in terms of the sorting. So let's see what we find here. Okay, so Cultivate and Krosan, or what is it called? Kodama's Reach, are cards that are very good if you don't have the perfect mana base. However, they're not cards that I ever play, especially in a 3-color deck, because if you're running no budget, whatever cards you want, there's just too many good lands that are non-basic that you want to play. So the only time I ever play these Cultivate and Kodama's Reach cards are in a budget deck or in a monocolored deck, because at that point you get rewarded from playing a lot of basics. So I'm going to automatically exclude this just because I know that we're not going to end up running enough basics for this to be good enough. But, and same thing for Rampant Growth, amazing card, excellent card, but, and you know, I know there's a new Rampant Growth in Avatar that is a lesson, so it's tempting to want to run that. Maybe we'll run enough basics just to run like Rampant Growth and that other one, or maybe just the other one. It's exactly like Rampant Growth, but it's also a lesson, but I'm not sure. In any case, we're going to skip Rampant Growth probably. I'm going to just put it in considering, just in case, so we can see it later if we need to. Nature's Lore, however, finds any forest, meaning this can find dual lands, which we're going to be playing unless you tell me otherwise. Shock lands, Surveil lands, all of those have forest in the type line, so we can find them with Nature's Lore, and that's what makes them, this card and 3 visits, so powerful. All right, Jessica's Will is a card we're probably going to play because, you know, we have to consider this carefully because it's a game changer. And we'll talk more about game changers later when it comes time to make refinements. But for now, I'm just going to add it because it makes a lot of sense. Mana Drain, you know, counters are not inherently good with this commander. I mean, of course they are because counters are just good. But if you consider like what we're going to be doing in the course of a game, since all of our spells have flashback on our turn, it makes it harder or less frequent that we're going to have mana up on opponents' turns, unless we have a way to untap our lands at the end of turn, which is something that we might want to consider. And as I'm thinking through this stuff, I want to note it down somewhere. So let's just write down like ways to untap on end step. And there's a few, right? There's Shadow of the Second Sun, there's Wilderness Reclamation, Seedborn Muse is a game changer, but all of these cards might make a lot of sense with this commander since we want to be spending all of our mana on our turn, but we're also playing a lot of instants. So there's this inherent like dissonance with those two ideas. So these cards that untap on our end step could give us a way to like take advantage of the reactive power of these colors that we may otherwise be missing out on. Does that make sense?
So is that in terms of because we're going to have instants and sorceries, you'd be casting them, or it's more on
exactly
untapping
like
them on
so if
other
you think
phase
about
turns?
like you think about like what we want to be doing with this commander, and it's like we want to play him. He costs a lot of mana, first of all, and then we want to be casting a bunch of instants and sorceries on our turn because we only get these discounts during your turn, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, everything about this commander says, I want to do stuff on my turn, but Then if you do that, you don't have any mana to protect him, right? Because you're tapped out, you've used your mana on your turn. So when I think of like how am I going to run counters in this deck, which I want to play counter spells because you really want to protect Iroh, but there's only a handful of free counter spells and we can't rely on always having those. So how do we end up getting mana on our turn? And the first thing I think of is like playing some way to untap on our end step, or playing some spell that can untap our lands and leaving mana up for that. And I'll show you how to find these when we get to it. Okay, so I want to add the counters for now, but if we don't end up finding enough ways to like leave mana up regularly, maybe we end up going a different route, which is like cutting all of the reactive spells, like counter spells, and focusing on some other element. But for now, my inclination is that we include these and figure out a way to make them work. Okay, so when I see a card like, what is your thought on when you see a card like Big Score for a deck like this?
Well, because the deck wants cards in the graveyard, it's interesting. Either discarding the card isn't necessarily so bad once you have your commander out.
Mm-hmm.
Creating the true treasures, it potentially allows you to store some mana for counter spells or something on future turns. So it seems potentially quite a synergistic card.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is a perfect card for this deck. It's a shame that like it's not a lesson, of course, but obviously it can't be. But if this were a lesson, being able to cast it for one is crazy, then we're going mana positive. But it's a good thought, and it makes me think like, should we be playing spell discounters, or does that not make sense because we are wasting the discount when we cast lessons? It's really going to depend on how good the lessons are. If there are enough fantastic lessons that we can include several in the deck, then I think including discounters doesn't make sense because we just lose that discount when we cast lessons. Because, well, I mean, like, this doesn't say anything about like that it can't go lower than one. So if we had a discounter, or say it's like a Sapphire Medallion or Ruby Medallion, then if we cast a blue lesson, I'm pretty sure we could just cast it for 0 at that point.
Right.
So that's really good, especially, and that gives us a way to, like, I don't know if there are any blue lesson counter spells, but if there are, that's fantastic because now we can discount that and then we've got free counter spells, right? So that's something we want to look for, right? Blue or...
I think there is one.
Lesson counter spells. So we'll look for that later. Cost reduction. Okay. All right, so we'll come back to those, but I want to keep going through this first. What I want to really focus on is only adding cards that we think are like really going to make the cut probably for the deck, because I want, well, we could always cut later, but as you become better at deck building, I think shortcutting and not adding cards that you're going to end up cutting later is an important skill that will save you a lot of time in the long run. What I often do instead is just put them in considering. This is why you'll see my deck lists have like 200 cards in considering, because I don't want to miss them. What I like to do is, like, if I refresh this and I've already added, oh no, I don't need to refresh. So like I like to see this when I'm adding stuff via my advanced search or via the EDH Rex button, because then I know at least I've considered this and moved it to considering. And then I don't often move stuff out of considering, although sometimes when I'm in the deck refinement stage, like after I've playtested a couple times, I'll go down to considering and say like, okay, what are the cards that I put down here that are in the types that I want? Like, I feel like I need more ramp. So let me look in the bottom section and see like what ramp spells I have down there that I might want to add. So I skipped over Growth Spiral. I don't often play this card. I feel like just too much has to go right for it to be good. But if I'm skipping over anything and you're like, hey, why did you skip that? And you're not sure, just let me know.
Yeah.
Harrow would be phenomenal if we run enough basics. So I'm just going to put in considering, but I'm not expecting that we play this. Sky Shroud Claim, though, is fantastic. This is like, this 3 visits and Nature's Lore are the like gods of green ramp. Like, these are the best 3 best green ramp spells, period. Because they not only find any forest, meaning they can find those dual land forests, they could find triomes, although I don't like triomes and don't play them, but they can find them. And they come in untapped for all 3 of these, if that land can be untapped. So, one of the reasons the original dual lands are so powerful is because they enter untapped, and they can be found with stuff that can find only a forest, for example. Sky Shroud Claim, same thing, puts in 2 forests just naturally, not tapped, and that's very powerful. I'm going to skip Unexpected Windfall just because it's double red, so it does the exact same thing as Big Score, but it's just going to be inherently a little bit worse, so I'm going to put in considering, but we might end up running it. Mana Geyser, 100%. I think this is a perfect deck for this card, so let's add that. Antish Restoration is just like Harrow. The commander's a 5/5, right? So he does trigger this, but still, I don't think we're going to be running enough basics to make this worth it. Seething Song's great. It's just like Dark Ritual, but it costs 3 instead of 1, but it still nets you the same amount of mana as Dark Ritual. So I think, especially if we're playing cost reducers, that's when Seething Song gets extra powerful, or spell copiers. Otherwise, it's just like Dark Ritual, but hey, being just like Dark Ritual, very good. Dark Ritual's amazing, right? Triple green, we're going to skip it, although this card's fantastic, but we can't get any cost reduction on this, so let's not. We're playing 3 really good colors here, or at least 2 really good colors in blue and green. Red's like, I don't know, probably the worst color in Commander, but we're going to have, long story short, we're going to have tons of options, especially with no budget. So that's why I'm like skipping a card like this that's very good. I just know from having built hundreds of decks that we're going to end up cutting it because it's just too restrictive for 3 colors. Temp with Discovery, good card, but probably not for this deck. There's not really any like specific lands we're going to be looking for. Like, I play this in decks that are running Cabal Coffers and Urborg Tomb of Yawgmoth because those are lands like you really want to find, and this can find any land, not just basics. So we're going to skip the stuff that finds specific land, like Hour of Promise, even though that's a really good card. These are just not colors that we care about finding any specific land, really. This gets lands back from the graveyard. We're not really doing that. Don't care about this stuff. This is a maybe, but it's probably not going to make the cut. I think same with Prismari Command. It's a good card, but I just usually end up cutting it, so we're going to skip that. This is an interesting one. It basically ramps us for X with a bunch of 1/1s. I think this is kind of exactly what we want, because this is making a bunch of mana dorks, which is what we want to use them for most of the time. But then it can also become a late game powerhouse where we make a bunch of 1/1s, but then we play whatever our win con is, be that like something like Crater
Sorry,
Huff.
so those can be tapped for mana, is it? Or
They can, yeah. They're like, do you know what Dryad Arbor is?
Yeah, I think it's just one of those. Yeah, I know what a mana dork is. I just didn't realize.
Well, Dryad Arbor's special. It's a forest. It's a land, but it's also a 1/1. It's like one of the. It's the only thing that is a land. Like, so it's a forest. So you could fetch it with Nature's Lore or Sky Shroud Claim.
Right.
But it's a 1/1. So the weird thing is, if someone plays a Blasphemous Act, your forest dies. So that's what this makes. It makes a bunch of Dryad Arbors. So very good card, because they are summoning sick. It tells you right on the card, but it doesn't. A lot of what we're going to be doing is just trying to set up a board state that, if we untap with it, or more likely we want to be playing a bunch of haste. So let's put that down. We're in red, right? We're in the haste color. So we're going to want haste anyway, because that sets up more situations where we can just win. So I think this is certainly a card we want to be playing.
Yeah.
No. Open the Way, definitely. This is one of the like premium green ramp spells. If you resolve this for X is 4, it's like kind of hard to lose that game. Or more likely, we want to be playing this on turn 5, so X is 3. Even though it's not like the most value, it's just a phenomenal setup play going into a turn where we're potentially playing Iroh, because now we're going from turn 5, where we had 5 mana, plus 3 land, and then maybe a land drop the following turn, into having 9 mana the following turn, meaning we could play Iroh, have 3 mana up to protect him. Because I think what we have to expect, and one thing I didn't say, is that this is a scary looking commander, and I think people are going to feel threatened by it. So I also think it's going to be important for you to explain to people what your deck does and how it's different from a normal Iroh deck, because
Yeah.
you know, you've inherently accepted that you're going to be playing a suboptimal build of Iroh, which I don't think it necessarily has to be that suboptimal, but it's not what people are going to expect. So I think explaining that to them is going to give you a little bit of leeway in terms of this not being as much of a kill on sight commander. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
So I think it's worth dropping just a quick comment at the beginning, especially if people say something about Iroh, which I think they might, like, oh, Iroh, like he's scary, or I've seen that card pop off. You know, if you hear something like that, especially, I think it's worth saying right away, well, yeah, I'm playing like a real, like kind of a weird twist on it where I'm focusing on making some creatures, because that just sounds so much less scary. And I think it is so much less scary because people can deal with creatures. They can't necessarily deal with someone just like playing 10 spells and then killing you with Aetherflux Reservoir, which is what
Yeah.
people might expect when they see this commander. Planar Genesis is like Growth Spiral. I think it's actually significantly better, but I still don't think we necessarily want to play it in this deck, so let's skip that one. I'm going to put it in considering because I actually like this card. It's like an Impulse or Rampa land, so it's pretty cool. This I like in decks that have sack outlets, but that's not going to be this deck, so we'll skip that. All right, I'm not seeing anything. We're getting down to the dregs. If you remember, we're looking at just ramp spells that are instants and sorceries right now.
Yeah, I noticed you skipped over Battle Hymn. Is that because you just don't think there'll be enough creatures? Because I guess at 4 creatures, it's equivalent to Desperate Ritual and costs 1 less.
So,
but it can't be used for early ramp, I guess, is the downside.
yeah, if we're making 4 off it, then it's equivalent to Seething Song, right? Because Seething Song costs 3 and makes 5, which is a difference of, so the mana production minus the cost is what we're netting. So 2, same with Dark Ritual, cost 1 makes 3, difference of 2. So if this makes 4, it's the same as Seething Song. So do we want a Seething Song that requires us to have 4 creatures that rewards us for having even more creatures? I think it feels like it can be win more. It also provides a very obvious trigger for opponents to do something. Like I don't like cards that give opponents a clue of how to disrupt this. So, you know, sometimes or often I think people are sitting with removal and they're like, I don't know what to do with this. I'm not comfortable asking the table. I don't know who the threat is. But when they see something happen that like gives them some sort of indication of like, ooh, this is a time where I can do something that is potentially flashy or is gonna like it's gonna get someone, right? Even if it's not the right play, a lot of times like people just want that feeling of like, gotcha. So I don't like playing cards like that. Now, I'm probably too extreme in that opinion, and cards like this can actually be quite powerful. But that's just what I think when I see a card like this. Oh, like this can create a situation where an opponent can get me by removing multiple of my creatures in response, even if that's not the right play. A lot of times people aren't making the right plays, right? They're just making plays that make them happy. That's what I think, but we can certainly play it, and I think it could be good in a lot of situations. So I put in considering for now. If you, by the way, if you want to override what I'm saying and just say, no, I want to play that, that looks cool, just tell me. I'm not going to be upset at all, because like I'm just giving you my opinion, but like these certainly can work. Anything else before we get out of here?
No, I think that's good.
Okay. All right, so we've got some sort of baseline here. I think all the cards that we've added here, with the exception of maybe Mana Drain, are cards that we are going to want to play. So I think this is a really good starting point. And let's see, we're 30 minutes in now. So I just want to take a look at this agenda. So we found the core cards. Okay, so let's get into advanced searches. So I guess we were only looking for ramp there. So I think another thing we want to look for now is what you've described as wanting to do with this deck, which is make tokens, because we only have one card that does that right now, because this is the only one that is also ramp. But I think still, like, this is a good starting point because we can take a look at this card in Tagger and see what its primary tag is, which I think is, okay, multiple bodies is a good one. Is that the only tag? Okay, well, that's fine. Let's look at this multiple bodies tag, and we can see what it does. One-shot effects that create 2 or more creatures on resolution, at least one of which is a token. So this is perfect. That's like kind of exactly what we want, right? So let's take a look and see what this looks like. And by the way, it doesn't give you the hyphens, but these tags all need hyphens between the words. I don't know why it doesn't give that to us. Okay, so it's going to give us creatures and whatever else that do this, but I think, so I think that's fine. We'll look at it just like this, but we might want to go in and refine and add this type instant or type sorcery, because we primarily want those cards in this deck, right? So I'm not going to search this yet, but I'm going to leave it up here. So once we get down a little bit, I might just add it. I don't know, maybe we just add it now. This is a great card if we know we're generating tokens by default, but since our commander doesn't do this naturally, I think we don't want to play a card like this, because this is definitely win more, right? This is like I was describing with that ritual we were just talking about, but even worse. This is a really great card in some decks, but I don't think it's going to make the cut here. Avenger, I think might make sense, even though it's not an instant or sorcery, just because it makes so many bodies, right? And, but I don't know. I like to really lean into the theme. So what I think when I envision what you've described and how this commander ends up being built is like, less than 10 creatures. And just like really leaning hard into the instants and sorceries theme, because not only is that fun, but it also pays off us playing cards that discount instants and sorceries, for example, or reward us playing lots of instants and sorceries, which our commander does, but we're going to want to be playing other stuff that also does that. So I think minimizing creatures makes a lot of sense, and it's the same reason we're running this kind of ramp versus stuff like Llanowar Elves, Birds of Paradise, etc.
Yeah.
Sokenzan, I mean, normally I would do land separately, but I think this land just makes a ton of sense in this deck, so let's add it. Because if we're flooded, it can at least make us 2 1/1s, and that might be the difference. Okay, so here's why are we finding this? Oh, because it makes multiple bodies. Okay, so this is not really what we were looking for, but I think this card makes a ton of sense in this deck. So this is the kind of creature I would want to play if I'm playing creatures at all. Is something that, like you've described, burns people out. I know it's not necessarily the route we want to be going, but the fact that it makes 2 creatures also, I think makes it the perfect card for this deck.
Yeah.
Azuri's Predation's a fun card and can be really powerful, but I think it's like a little bit of a lower bracket card. So we'll skip that. Okay. Agate Instigator. Let's add it for now. I don't know if we'll end up playing it, but I like the idea of it. Arachnogenesis seems perfect. I like to run like 1 fog in my decks, maybe even 2, because I think they generally play out quite well. And one like this that also makes a bunch of creatures seems perfect for this deck potentially, especially if we're playing rewards for multiple creatures entering. This can just win you the game if you have a Perforos in play or something, right? Or Furforos, as I like to call it. No, this is Furforos. Yeah, but anyway, whatever. Never mind. Let's put this in for now. And this can flash back. So like, oh, that's only on our turn. Dang, that's sad.
Yeah,
I wish they didn't add that only on your turn part.
probably too powerful then.
Yeah, probably. I like this. This card's, I think, plays out really well. It can, for 1 red, just give your team haste, which sometimes you'll cast it for that mode, or sometimes you'll cast it for 5, and that could be really good. Pest Infestation is a good consideration, I think. Let's put it in. And if we find we're playing a lot of X spells, we could consider like payoffs for that too, because there are some really good ones in these colors, like Magus Lucia Kane, for example. I think it's probably too much of a side path, but it's something to think about. Okay, so I don't want to like get too bogged down in this. I think this is, I'm going to try to go a little bit more quickly through each of these possible like things that we're looking at, because I think you just want to learn this and then you could do the deck building yourself. Is that true? Okay.
Correct, yes.
All right, so that's another way. Now that I've got some cards, there's one other card. I would like to show you how to find this so it's not just me suggesting it. Actually, let's just go back to that multiple body search because I want to see if it's here. It's not. I think there's a tag called like repeatable token maker. So let's look at this. What is it called? Repeatable. Do we have any cards that are making repeated tokens yet? Not yet. These are all like single creation. That was what the multiple bodies thing is.
Yeah.
So I guess what is a card? Do you know off the top of your head cards that like for Spellslinger that make multiple bodies?
Just like Kaikar, Wing.
Perfect. Okay.
So
that's all you need is something to get started. It doesn't matter if it fits this deck. So what I'm looking for is just what the tag is called. So you could type in any creature you could think of that just makes a creature on cast, for example. And this is what we're looking for, repeatable creature tokens. So let's try this. And see what we find, because this is the meat of what we want, I think. Okay. Scoot Swarm is probably a good choice for this deck. Is it a card you want to play? Sometimes I don't like to play this card just because it like can create a little bit of a scene.
Yeah.
But it's definitely going to win you some games.
It's not a landfall. Yeah, and in this deck, we're not really playing like massive landfall.
Well,
bringing in 1 million lands a turn, I guess.
Well, the thing is, we kind of are, right? We're playing a bunch of ramp spells, and those ramp spells can be flashed back. So, I mean, this card's going to be really good in this deck. Now,
I mean, I'm fine to include it.
You're what?
I'd be fine to include it, especially as we're playing a potentially suboptimal theme anyway. So it doesn't feel like
the only reason I wouldn't. So it's going to be excellent in this deck. I will just tell you, but I might not play it because I don't necessarily like playing this card. I think it can be like, the game becomes. It's not like too strong. People should be able to deal with it, but it can make the game all about this card, and that's not necessarily what we want to be doing with this theme. However, I think what I like to do when I'm building a deck like this, like you're doing, which is something that's fun and very thematic, is put strong cards like this in and then cut them later once I get the deck working. So you might consider doing that, which is play it now. But if you're finding like you're winning just because of this, which will happen, sometimes no one has an answer and you just play a Skyshroud Claim and like you have haste and you won. Like all you need is like 8 of these to survive, and then you go to your turn, you cast like 1 ramp spell, and you've got all of a sudden 128 of them, and you kind of just win. So feel free to cut this later, but I think it's going to be excellent in the deck. And it's the kind of card you shouldn't just run out necessarily on turn 3. Like hold it till they've spent some of their resources, and then you can slam it late and just win. Especially if you have something like Perforos or, Agate Instigator effect like that. That's like Impact Tremors, that kind of thing. Talrand seems kind of perfect for this deck. It's sort of what we want to be doing, right? Which is making guys every time we cast a spell. Might be a little slow, but let's put it in for now. I think it seems exactly what we want to do. Same with Young Pyromancer. This is the classic spell slinger, create a creature. This is what I was potentially expecting you to say when I asked for a creature that makes creatures. But, I know you're a little bit newer, so maybe you're not as familiar with this card, but this is like the old school, like, creature that does this. All right. We got the biggest ones, I think. Oh, let's put this guy in. He's good too. This triggers on any non-creature, which is great. And, we could refine this search and say, like, let's include the words non-creature or instant. What does it say? Instant or sorcery. And if you have any questions about what I'm typing in terms of syntax, let me know. But I think you know a lot of this already. So see how we refined down and are trying to get more of what we want to find. Shark Typhoon. Maybe. Arasta is probably good enough. We'll see. This is like on the low end of this type of effect because it's 4 mana. But it makes flyers, so that's cool. Let's put in Considering, right? Same with Saheeli. Considering is fine. Ral is really good. Have you ever played with this card?
I have not. I've seen it though.
So fun.
But I haven't.
So fun. So good. You can like storm off and like if you can get to this -10 the same turn you play him, potentially, which is pretty cool.
I've looked at it in some of the stormy type decks I build, but recently I've been I moved towards like more big mana than casting a lot of spells. So I think
Okay. Well, we could end up cutting him, but he makes tokens, so I think this is cool. Ovika. So Ovika is really strong. It costs 7 mana, but like this is kind of exactly what we want. But the other nice thing is like this is the kind of commander that we might want to look at we might want to look at decks, Ovika decks, to get inspiration for this deck. So when you see a legendary that does something like this, could be a good linchpin card. You know what I mean? So let's add this. I don't know if we'll end up playing it because it's 7 mana. It's kind of like different than what we're doing. This, by the way, can be, I think, great for this deck. I don't know, but like seems kind of perfect.
Yeah.
A little mana intensive, but like this is sweet, because I think a lot of times since he costs 6 mana, you're not necessarily just wanting to play him on turn 6 when you have 6 mana because it's harder to protect him then. So I think setting up with a spell like this could be really like a good path to winning, because then you have a payoff in play. And then when you play Iroh, you could have 1 mana up for something like Tamiyo Safekeeping or like an offer you can't refuse or something like that. Okay, and since I thought of those cards, let's just add them, right? Tamiyo's, whoops. And apologies to just like add stuff that I'm thinking of. If you wanted to know like how I thought of this card, let me know. But like Tamiyo Safekeeping is just a card you should be aware of, that it's like a 1 mana protect any one thing, like a heroic intervention for one thing. You also gain life. I actually play this a lot more often than I play Heroic Intervention because it's a lot easier to hold up 1 mana than 2, and it's a lot less suspect. Like a lot of times when you're holding up 2 in green, people are going to expect Heroic Intervention, but they rarely expect a card like this. Okay, so let me just take a look at my notes real quick. I want to show you some other methods because I think you know enough about like finding stuff via tags. Any questions on like what we've done so far or like just
No, I
anything?
think that's all good. It's very clear.
Okay, so let me show you some other stuff. So now that we've got some stuff in the deck, I want to show you two other ways to search for stuff. One way is via the Moxfield search. So if we go to the homepage of Moxfield and click on Advanced, we can do a few different things with this. We can search for cards that are just this commander, right? If we want. So let's just start off by doing only this. Hit save, and then we can go to sort. And usually what I like to do is click on either most views or most likes. I like to do most views because people are not always good at hitting like on the deck lists. By the way, if you're watching my channel and you're a fan, please hit like on my Moxfield deck lists and on the videos because I don't get enough likes. So small shout out. Really appreciate it if you did that. So yeah, don't click most likes like I just did. Click on most views, I think. And then look at just some of the like biggest lists. Maybe avoid ones that say EDH. In fact, you can add a filter that says the bracket, but people aren't always good about putting in the bracket, so I prefer to avoid doing that. And then you can just look at a couple of these. And let's say you like this one, right? I'm not going to like spend any time actually looking at this, but let's say you find one you like. You can then copy this deck list, go to your list, hit more, compare, paste in that list, and then just add cards straight from here, right? This can save you a ton of time because even if it's not exactly what you want, it's going to find you a ton of stuff that you will want. Like you're going to look at it and be like, yes, that's perfect. I want it, right? So this is going to save you a ton of time. And then even better, if you know like Surf City TCG has a Iroh Grand Lotus deck that you want to copy or at least get inspiration from, you can go back to the search, do exactly what we just did, put in that commander, and then say author Surf City TCG and find my list that has Iroh. Or if you don't know if I have a deck list and you try and it's like, oh, there's no results. How do I go back? What you could do instead is say, what's a card in this deck that is going to be representative of the type of deck that I want? Like, in fact, I'm just going to ask you right now, Dave, like pick a card in this deck that you feel like is like the card that most resonates with what you were thinking this deck wants to be.
Maybe the Avika Enigma Goliath?
That's one. This is maybe a little too narrow. Is there a more like generic version of this? Try to pick like the most common card.
Most common.
I'm thinking like one of these three. So like Talrand, you know, is a good one. This is like decks that include Talrand are probably going to be similar to what we're wanting to do.
Yes.
Or Young Pyromancer. Like these are monocolored, so you're going to find more results. Sometimes it could be better to pick a very specific card. Like, in fact, what you can also do is pick a card that is like omnipresent in a teamer deck. For example, like what is the most popular, like if we let's go to EDH Rec real quick and go to cards, top cards. Can we filter to just teamer cards? All right, let's do this instead by color, multicolor. How do you find like...
Maybe under the card filters color, it might let you select multiple. Just where the filter is. It said colors, so I don't know if it lets you pick. So
where?
Under card filters.
Oh.
Yeah, and then colors.
Okay, cool. Thanks. Okay, Teamer Ascendancy. This, I mean, it cares about power 4 or greater, so maybe not exactly what we want. So anyway, like maybe there's not a perfect example here, but like a land is often good, you know? Is there a land that will show us what we want?
One?
say that again?
Was it Sokensen, the one that lets you create tokens as well?
That could be, but what I was thinking is there a teamer land? Now there's the Triome. That's something that you're not going to find necessarily in my deck. Let's just try team. I just want to show you, this isn't going to be perfect for this deck, but I just want to show you a methodology. So let's just use Teamer Ascendancy. So let's say Teamer Ascendancy, and then you put in me as the author. This is going to give you my deck lists that include Teamer Ascendancy, with which you can then compare to what's in these lists. This is going to be a great shortcut to help you find cards. Like if you're trying to build this deck like as fast as possible, I think this is going to be the easiest way to do that. You're going to, well, the easiest way is probably the first thing I showed you, which is just look for Grand Iroh decks, not necessarily built by me, built by anyone, and then compare to those. And in fact, like what you could even do if you just wanted to like get a deck list, let's say the instruction was build this Grand Iroh deck list in the way you want it to be built in less than 2 hours. I think what I would tell you is go to Moxfield, find a deck that looks similar to what you want, and just duplicate it, right? So go to Advanced, look for Iroh, maybe say, I want Iroh decks that include Young Pyromancer, right? Because this is going to be more indicative of the kind of build that you're hoping for, right?
Yeah.
And then search, and then sort, like I showed you, sort by like most likes, or not most likes, most views. And you could try both, you know, and say, okay, this is the most viewed Iroh deck that includes Young Pyromancer. So is it similar to what I want to be doing? Right? And if it is, you could say more, duplicate, just make an exact copy of it, and then go about cutting the stuff you don't like and adding the stuff you do like. So this is going to be the absolute fastest and easiest way to just get rolling on your idea. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Is that helpful?
Yep, makes sense. Yeah.
Okay. And then EDH Rec's you're going to be able to do something similar, which is, do you know about the advanced filters on EDH Rec?
No. Well,
okay. Well, that's really important. So let me show you.
I don't.
Well, let me show you this. And if you already know this, stop me, because this is very, very helpful. Okay. So if I just type in Iroh, EDH Rec's going to show me by default. Oh, we've already got this stuff. So let's remove the filter we added, because we just want, how do I reset? Just refresh. Okay, so this is like the default view for EDH Rec, right? It's going to show the most popular cards independent of anything. So this is going to give you a lot of good stuff by default. But let's say you want to refine a little, because, you know, like you said, you don't want to just like get the typical Iroh build that everyone is doing. The easiest way to achieve that is with these advanced deck filters. These are very powerful. So what they're going to do is, let's say we want to include, only show decks that include Young Pyromancer. We can add this filter, hit filter, and now instead of giving us 4,000 decks, it's going to give us 841 decks, only those that include Young Pyromancer. So this, and the advantage of doing this is decks that include Young Pyromancer are far more likely to include cards that synergize with it, which is much more likely to be something that you want, right? So, and you can do the same, like add more and more refinement. You could say, I only want to, and you know, the other thing you can do is say, let's look at the main Iroh EDH Rex page again. So let's remove this filter, hit filter again, or how do we clear the filters? I love EDH Rec, but I don't love the interface because I never feel like it's intuitive. Does it just automatically filter when we X that?
Maybe click filter. And
oh, it's grayed out.
still got 840 decks, so it looks like it's using the old.
Yeah, how do we... Oh, hit X here?
Yeah,
Okay.
that must be it.
Okay, good. So what I want to do is find a card we don't want. So like that's high in the list here. I think this is one of the most powerful ways to use EDH Rec, is by finding a card that a lot of people are playing that you're not really interested in playing. Maybe a good example is Aetherflux Reservoir. Let's just see where that is in this list. Or like, if there's one that you can think of, let me know. Aetherflux Reservoir is an 8.8% of decks. I'm trying to think of like, what is the, when you thought of like what you don't want out of this style of build, is there something that you think of? How about,
I mean, it
do
probably
you know
is
what
like
Gutter
a
Snipe is?
reservoir type, or yeah, exactly. Oh, exactly. Something where you just cast an instant and ping for 1 damage.
Okay, so Gutter Snipe is a card you probably don't want to play. Is that fair to say?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so that's perfect. That's the perfect card because that's going to be in tons of lists, right? If we look for Gutter Snipe, just where it is, yeah, it's in 50% of decks. Yeah. So that's the perfect card to say change from with to without Gutter Snipe.
Yeah.
This is the like most powerful way to use EDH Rec because now you automatically have this excluded, which means not only is that card going to be excluded, but it's going to exclude all the decks that include that card. And the decks that include that card are also going to contain a lot of other cards that are similar that you also don't want to be playing. Therefore, what we can ascertain from that is that the cards that are showing here now are much more likely to be cards that you want to be playing. Now, we can also add with Young Pyromancer. Now we're seeing even more of a refinement, right? Because we had 841 when it was just decks with Young Pyromancer. Yeah. But now if it's both of these, it's going to be even less than that, right? It's going to be, so even less again. Yeah. So now these 330 decks remaining are probably very similar to what we want to be doing. And we can actually like go in and look at these lists, right? There's a way to see the decks. I think you just click here. I don't want to bother doing it, but play around with this because this can do a lot of powerful things. And these aren't the only useful filters. Like this number of creatures one can be really good too. Because you might want to say like, I want to see decks that are less than 10 creatures because I really want this to be like heavy spells, right? You could do that. You can say, I want to say decks that have a certain number of lands because, or another good one is like something that can help indicate bracket is I want to say cards without Underworld Breach. If you're seeing cards down here that are like not quite what you were hoping for, or like leaning more towards CDH or something like that, you can add filters like this. You could say, I want to see cards without, or decks without Gaia's Cradle, because you don't want to be playing that. And that might be the signpost of a style of deck that you're not wanting, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You can also do general stuff like price, right? I want to see decks that are under 2,000 US or something. Or I want to see decks that are over 100 because like these budget decks are not what I'm like going for either. Okay. So any questions on the advanced search? There's a lot more you can do with this stuff. And I'm sure there are some really good YouTube guides on how to use these advanced filters, but this is a really good way to help you find stuff that you're looking for.
Yep, that's clear.
Good. All right. So those are the two methods I wanted to show you, like using the advanced search in Moxfield and using the advanced searches in EDH Rec. Aside from that and the tagger searches, I think you know everything you need to know in terms of my skills of how to like find cards for this deck. So we have 30 minutes left. Do you have a vision of how you want to spend the remaining time today, or are you open to my suggestions? What are you thinking?
I'm open to your suggestions, yeah.
Okay. So I think given what we've done so far, let's try to implement some of those methods that we just used, right? So I think the one I want to focus on is the advanced search in Moxfield. I think that's going to be the most useful. So let's go back to start, and let's say commander is Iroh. Let's say we want to include young pyromancer. Okay, and there's no exclude, I don't think. So that's unfortunate, but it's okay. We'll just start with this. And then we'll sort by most views. So I just want to quickly I'm just hitting middle mouse button to open these in new tabs. I'm just going to look at the top 4 and just like skim through them and see like, is this kind of something that looks like we want? So I'm seeing Shark Typhoon. I'm seeing like Archmage. This looks like maybe it's about like, okay, so I see Gutter Snipe. This is probably not quite what we want. So I think we'll skip that one. I'm not seeing like a ton of stuff I necessarily love. All right, this one though is looking a little more like what we potentially want, right? I don't see Gutter Snipe.
Yeah.
I'm seeing like this is sort of a Gutter Snipe style of thing, but I don't think that means that there's nothing here we want. Third Path Iconoclast is probably something that we want. And this seems like potentially a good one. So let's try this one. So let's do a compare to that list. Okay. So let's think about these cards in the context of what Iroh does. And I think Veyran copying triggers is not what we need, right? I mean, it does help the other support creatures, but it doesn't help Iroh. So I think we'll skip Veyran. Probably
I think
want...
it's also, I think those like very prowess type cards often then lead into the very like storm spell slinging, because you need to cast everything on one turn as well, which is probably not what we're going for.
So let's add hybridization. I think it's just strong enough that we want to play it, and it's an instant. The mana rocks we're going to skip over. Lands I'm not going to worry about for the purposes of this deck guide. I think you can handle that. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Okay. If you want to do it, we can, but I think we're better off focusing on non-lands for the purposes of the remaining time. All right, Bolt Bend, probably not good enough, especially now that Deflecting Swat is no longer a game changer. I think I only run this card in mono red, pretty much. Chaos Warp, I think we want. What does this do? Okay, different than what we're doing, so let's skip that. We're not going to bother with Grape Shot. Bria is perfect. This is like... Wait, no.
Yeah.
So this pumps the team, right? So it gives all of our creatures prowess, and it makes stuff unblockable. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, once you've got a board state and then you play that, and then, you cast even like 3 spells.
Right. This is a finisher, right?
All your tokens are going to be...
Is it the finisher for this deck? I don't know, but let's add it for now. And I think we probably only want like 3 to 5 finishers. I don't know if this is the one we want, because my inclination is that we want an instant or sorcery that is a finisher. But this is a very good finisher. So if we end up going tall with the tokens that we make, like that Rite of the Flame Caller or whatever it was called, that 6 mana enchantment, then I think that lends towards playing this card, because the fact that she can make stuff unblockable seems really powerful in that sort of build.
Yeah, and I guess the advantage of this over, like, say, a big X spell or something is it's less likely to be countered. And if you don't have protection, then that could, spoil the whole game plan.
Yep, that makes a lot of sense.
You just go for a big instant or sorcery.
Thoughts on VV in this deck?
I mean, I think it's just such a powerful card. It would work because of the power, even if it's maybe not necessarily the ideal plan, but it's just so powerful.
If you're playing a deck that's primarily non-creature spells, like, it's a mistake not to play this. Now, is it a mistake not to play this, period? Definitely not, because this is just like Scoot Swarm. Like, it's extremely similar, not in function, but in that it's going to win you the game on its own, independent of what you're doing. So I think play it for now, but like if you cut it later because you don't want the deck to be about VV when you draw it, that's totally reasonable. That's a reason I wouldn't play it. But otherwise, like, you should play it if you just want your deck to be as good as it can be. Let's put this in for now. First of all, let's just add it for now. I doubt we'll end up playing it because 3-color decks, like, you know, we might just not have enough blue. Snap is perfect. You know, again, I love Snap in any deck, but like in a deck like this where we're potentially running some cost reduction, and I've talked about cost reduction a couple times now, so I think like this might be a time where I divert from what I'm doing. I just duplicate this tag so we don't have to like exit out of what we're doing there, and then go back to the deck list and like let's just look for some cost reduction stuff, because I think that is a good path forward at this point. Dang. I wish the tags were more intuitive.
Yeah.
Because I can't ever remember the exact wording of them. Cost reducer, of course. Okay, so we're finding stuff we don't want. So I think what we do in this case is subtract out stuff we don't want to see. So for example, we see a couple of words right here that are probably going to come up frequently. Let's just exclude those. So I just said, oh, artifact spells, and then put this minus at the front, right?
Right.
So let's try again. Is there still stuff we don't want to see? Yes, but not as much, right? Let's take out the words creature spells too, because that's going to come up frequently. I don't need to bother subtracting out black spells and like green spell or whatever, white spells. Those are only going to be like one-ofs anyway, but these are going to come up frequently. So let's take the time to remove those. Probably not, right? I think we'd want to focus on non-creature spell reduction. Maybe. Could be, right? But we have to pick instant or sorcery, so probably not. Let's just put in considering. Colorless, historic, no. We don't care about activated abilities, don't care about this. Brawl, maybe. I don't love playing this card because it scares people. Then they're like, oh, you're going to be countering all my stuff?
Yeah.
Like, no, I'm just playing for the first line, don't worry. You know, but like, you know, maybe. This guy seems perfect, right? He's a cost reducer, he's got prowess, he's got haste, that's cool. All that stuff's good. How about this card? What do you think about this guy?
I mean, the text itself is fantastic, but I don't know if it's worth the 5 mana.
Argue in favor of this card for me.
Yeah, it's a good setup card on, I guess, the turn before you play Iroh as well.
Exactly.
It probably.
Also, like, he's got a huge butt, right? You know, what's going to go wrong with this deck? Like how are
you run out
imagine
of cards,
how you lose how are you losing? This is, by the way, just sorry to interrupt you, but like this is how I often build, right? Like I'll be like, you know, because it's really easy to get in this like and maybe it's happened to you where you're like, okay, like I'm imagining it's going to work like this and it's going to work like this and all that, and then you play a game and nothing goes to plan, and like you're like, man, what happened? Like I wasn't able to like execute any of that stuff I thought about. So a lot of times what I like to do is, and you know, it feels a little negative, but I think it's a good way to build, is what are all the things that might go wrong with this commander and how can I like prevent those things from happening? So what can go wrong with this commander?
You don't have ways to get cards into your graveyard. You don't have enough draw to get cards into your hand. You don't hit enough ramp in the early turns to be able to get out the commander. The commander gets countered, and so you're down 6 mana. Your graveyard gets exiled.
Okay, so
board wipes are probably a bit punitive as well, given our creature focus, like the creature tokens.
Okay, good. So how does this card affect those issues that we just... And one thing that you didn't mention that I think is a concern is aggro decks might be a little tough for us because we're playing a 6-mana commander that is focusing on playing a lot of non-creature spells.
Mm.
The goal is that you do end up spell slinging out a bunch of creatures, but there are times where that is not going to go to plan, right? So I think when I see a card like this, I think it does a lot of the things we want. It's a draw engine, it's a cost reducer. It's got a big butt, so it helps defend early. Like a lot of times just having a creature like this out, it just dissuades attacks pretty often, right? They're like, oh, you have a 3/6. Okay, can't attack you. It's like a Baleful Strix in that way. It's like this card that like is going to prevent people from coming at you. In fact, Baleful Strix would be a great card in this deck. We can't run it because it includes black. But is there a card that's similar to Baleful Strix that we can run? There actually is. I mean, I don't expect you to just know this off the top of your head, but I think it might be a good included in this deck, and it's Tower Winder, which is the 2-mana 1/1 snake that has reach and death touch, and it finds a command tower out of your deck when you cast it. So let's just, where's the like regular list? I'm going to open the duplicate again because I don't know where the other one is. Let's just put that in as a consideration. I don't know if we'll play it, but like this is a great card for this style of deck because it's like this literally rattlesnake effect that is like, all right, I'm not attacking Dave because he's got that damn 1/1 that I'm not going to spend removal on. But like, this draws you a card when it enters. It sucks if you drew the command tower first, but like, whatever. It happens occasionally. Yeah. It's still a great blocker, so something to consider. I'm trying to go a little bit more quickly because we're running short on time. Let's just put this in for now, but I could see end up cutting it like 2. I do like that it's 5 leading into your 6, but it's certainly, the other thing that we didn't say is like, if you play this and it's like a lightning rod and people are like, I got to kill that thing. It's so scary, which is something I might think.
Yeah. They're using that removal.
Exactly. That's one less thing that might remove your commander. So like, is that even bad?
Yeah.
It could be. I'm not necessarily saying that is good or bad, but it's like maybe not that bad, right? If you are curving into your commander, your thing gets removed. That's not only is it one less removal spell that they have, it's also like a psychological barrier, right? Because they're like, I just killed your last thing. I don't want to kill your commander in the next turn. People are just not wanting to be such a dick.
Yeah.
Which is valid, right? Like, I wouldn't want to do that. Like, I wouldn't want to swords this guy and then you play your commander and like path to exile that. Like, I would just feel awful, even though it might be the right play.
Yeah.
Primal Amulet, I think this is a great deck for this card. I often find myself cutting this. Do you know what this one does?
I do, yeah. So I think it could work in this deck. The problem I usually have with this card in my other decks is that the 4 mana is often quite a lot because they just don't have the ramp. Like Mono Red essentially doesn't have the ramp to be able to play it. Like by 4 mana, you need to be doing something more game winning. But in a deck with green, actually 4 mana is not that much of a roadblock.
Totally. I think this card, like, this seems like the perfect deck for this card, actually.
Yeah.
So, like, and I agree with you. Like, I often end up cutting it for that exact reason, but I really like the idea of it in this deck. Because this is a green Spellslinger deck. Those are things that don't normally come together. I really like your idea. This looks very fun. Okay. And maybe we run this guy because he seems good too. This one, possibly. I like this card. I just don't often end up playing it. Let's consider that one too, since I'm seeing it. Okay, spells from the graveyard or exile. Are we casting from the graveyard or exile? We are, right? So like, this is something I wanted to get to, and I'm glad we saw this because we only have 15 minutes left, but I wanted to show you a card, or like, how do we find cards like that? Let's try the tagger. Doc Warlock. Okay, Synergy Graveyard Cast. That's one that we might want to check out, right? This is maybe even better, though. This is what I was hoping to find, this tag. So I'm glad we came across it naturally, but this tag right here is the key to what you're trying to do, I think, in a way. So, because it's caring about us casting cards from anywhere that isn't our hand. And there are a lot of cards like this. but there's one in particular that I want to find, and I think we'll find it now that we found this tag. So let's see what we get. Okay, so didn't we add this? I'm just refreshing. Yeah, it's added now. Okay, so let's look carefully at all of this stuff. This is the card, by the way, that I thought of immediately when you talked about this commander, and I was hoping we came across it. The Lost in the Damned.
Okay, I haven't seen that one.
This is exactly like what this deck wants to do. And one thing that I don't think you'll necessarily know from seeing this, except that Warhammer was a set that was only commander decks. Did you know that?
No.
Okay, so Warhammer was 4 commander decks, and that was it. There's nothing but commander cards. So knowing that begs a particular question. Do you know what I'm getting at here?
I guess one of the commanders was in this colors, so maybe it would have
exactly. So what deck is this?
I have that precon, there's the Swarm Lord.
Exactly.
Animal,
so should we look at cards from that deck is the question. And I think the answer is absolutely, because that can give us some huge clues. I'm not going to spend any time doing that right now because it's going to take a little bit of time, but definitely note that down because...
Yeah, and it was focused on X spells.
Exactly. And same with Keeper of Secrets. I think it's from the same deck. Same with Flaming Tyrannosaurus, okay? And the 13th Doctor.
Yeah.
So I have a 13th Doctor Yasmin Khan deck that is in Teamer colors. Check it out.
Yeah.
Compared to
this.
It's
interesting because a lot of these, like the red cards, especially, are cards I've seen and would like to include in my mono red decks, but I just can't because of the cost. Like 6 for Keeper of Secrets.
Note those cards.
I need to win.
So note down those cards when you see them, even if you don't have time, like even if you're just like driving or, you're out doing chores, but you think of like this card that's like, oh, that card might be perfect. Just write it down and then use the methods I showed you, which is search Moxfield for decks that include that card, search EDH Rec with these filters. That's the like way you find like cool stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. So I don't want to spend a ton of more time looking at this because I think there's a few more things we want to look at in terms of the actual deck itself. Although
there a specific card? That was the specific card, sorry.
The Lost in the Damned was the specific one. Right. But I still think you should spend more time looking at this tag because there's going to be a lot of good stuff. There's not that many really, but there's going to be a lot of good stuff in here that, and we might have missed it, but like, does Young Pyromancer have a tag that is just like about spell slinging? Cast Trigger. This is another one that you should look at. And you can look at these tags in conjunction with each other. So like Cast Trigger U plus like repeatable token generator, like this combination of tags or synergy instant and synergy sorcery, like the power of these tags is not in looking at the single ones. It's in looking at specific combinations that will give you like really very focused on what you want.
Yeah. So when you put sense? 2, it requires both of them it requires the cards to have both of the tags or either?
Exactly. So if I list this one, if I list both of these, it's going to require both.
Right.
But if I, with parentheses, put an or in between, now it's going to be one or the other. Okay?
Yeah.
So this or with parentheses is one of the most powerful things you can do with Scryfall Search. Okay? So like really start to like learn these combinations and permutations of searches because that's going to like, and you're going to get better and better at this. It's fun. I find it fun to like learn how to refine these searches in very specific ways. It gives you so much power in your hands to find exactly what you want, especially with the minus. The minus is the biggest thing because you might find stuff like this, but be like, seeing a lot of things that you don't really want. So like just very selectively starting to subtract stuff out is going to give you these like perfect results that really do exactly what you want to be doing.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Makes sense.
Okay. I think we're no, we've got 10 minutes left. So any questions you have in the last 10 minutes?
No, I don't think there's anything specific. I guess in terms of the steps you'd go through to build the deck, so you've done ramp. Are the
Right.
other categories
So
like
we're at
draw, win
48
cost,
cards right
payoffs,
now,
like
right? So like
yeah.
what I would do at this point is add types and tags, and I think I probably already have all of these. Okay, there's only one that I don't have, so let's just add this one. Okay, so we don't have any lands, right? We got 2 lands. So I think what I would do at this point, if it were just me, is I would go and add my best lands and then take out the ones that don't apply. But in lieu of that, let's just put in some basics, right? We can fix the mana base later. I think that's the least important thing, and the thing that, I mean, in actuality, it's the most important thing. But in terms of the deck building process, it's the least important thing and the thing that you can fix later, right? So let's just figure out how many lands approximately we're going to want to run in this deck. And I would say that that number is somewhere between 36 and 38. You know, if you're curious how I came up with that, I can elaborate, but I don't think we need to focus on that. So I'm just going to add...
Would you want a lot of the like MDFCs in this deck? Because you can cast them from the graveyard potentially.
Definitely. Because, you know, I think you do anyway in most decks, but especially this deck, because exactly, like, it's really important for you to have spells. So that's something you can look for. You can say, tag MDFC, is that a thing? All right, you can figure out what it is based on the tags. But
and then for the go on, sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say for the card draw element as well, would you want to lean into wheels more than card draw because of, again, the graveyard element? Or
I think so.
Like, how would you weight those two?
I think so. I think I would, you know, let's just see what the best, well, like what's coming up in terms of draw. Is it card or it's just draw, I think. You can look for wheels specifically. I think that's actually a tag, but draw will be inclusive of that. It's just a lot broader. And then we want definitely type instant or type sorcery, just like I showed you before with the parentheses. And we could start with this, but then we could say, well, we really want like a discard element too. So you could add the word, say, I want to see draw spells that include the word discard, because then it's going to show us wheels. It's going to show us stuff like Frantic Search, which is like the card we want in this deck. This card, first of all, like I think you put in pretty much every blue deck. It's just so good, especially if you've got cost reducers, especially if you have ways to copy spells. You know, it might be worth looking for ways to copy spells. You know, there's a lot of ideas that spring from this process, and we just don't have. And this is why it takes me forever to build decks, because as I add more, I think of other things to add. And like, the more you do this, the more that will happen. And that's both good and bad, because it's going to take you longer, but you're going to end up finding more of exactly what you want. And you're going to get to a point where you're like, should I run more wheels or more discard, which is what you just asked me? And I don't know the answer to that question yet. And I think the only way you can know is to just throw together a 100 card list, accept that it's not going to be perfect, and play a game. Like, I do that all the time. Whether or not you believe me or realize that, I'll just like get to a point where I'm like, I have no idea what to cut. I have no idea what to add. I have a million options. I'm just going to like draw a line in the sand, play a game, know it's not going to go well, but know that I'm going to learn so much from it, because there's nothing like playing a game to like learn some lessons, right? We didn't even spend any time looking for lessons, you know, come to think of it. But that's the easiest thing for you to do. That's not what you asked of me of this build, because I think it's very easy for you to just go, now that you know, you could go type lesson, right? And just leave it at that and say, all right, which of these makes sense? Like, which of these do I want to play? Knowing that instants that like are reactive like this, you know, it's probable that we want to play this card, but not a guarantee, because Iroh doesn't let us cast it on others' turns. Now, it might be good enough anyway, but given that we're going to have access to like Fierce Guardianship, Deflecting Swat, some of the best protection spells, I just don't know if we are going to need this. In fact, I'm guessing probably not. Even though, now, the fact that it's so thematic and it's from the set might mean you want to play it anyway, and that's totally fine. But I don't think it makes the cut in the fully optimized version of this deck that you're laying out here,
Yeah.
if that makes sense. But, you know,
No, that makes
we do want to play Deflecting Swap, almost certainly, and Fierce. I think those are like guarantees. We didn't talk a ton about game changers. We've got 3 right now. And I think these are probably the 3 we want. What I like to do, and what I would recommend you do, is create a package that is the game changers. Because then what you can do is say, compare to your deck game changers. This is actually a deck I made, not a package, because unfortunately, Moxfield, if you're watching, please allow us to compare to packages. I wish we could do that. But I actually made a deck list of game changers because I couldn't do that. So now I can just look through and see like, all right, what are our options for game changers? And I didn't update this based on the recent changes. So like there's some stuff in here that maybe shouldn't be and vice versa. But this is still a good way to understand like what the options are very easily when you're using Moxfield. The other one I consider in most bracket 3 decks is the One Ring. I don't think this deck wants the One Ring, believe it or not, because we want spells, right, that are drawing us cards. So I think the One Ring, although it would be excellent in this deck anyway, even in spite of that, is not necessarily what we want. Gamble is a good option, that actually a really good option because you know,
you discard it.
Exactly. If you discard it, it's not the end of the world. So that's one that I think I would add.
Yeah.
But
so
then
should we be adding those other, like there's some blue cards, aren't there, where an opponent picks cards and some go into the graveyard? I forget.
Right. Factor Fiction, right? Factor Fiction. And as soon as you think of this, Dave, don't just add it, but go to Tagger, right, and say Factor Fiction. Is there a tag that like is exactly what we want, which is mini game? That's fun. I'm actually curious to look at this, but I won't do that now. But, you know, figure out which of these makes sense. You know, mill self, right?
And then find the combination.
Right. Mill self plus this plus, or, you know, maybe not even plus. Like maybe you just start off. Sometimes you won't know what combination. So just start off with this one, see what it gives you, and be like, okay, well, I don't want certain things here, right? Tybalt Trickery, not what I want necessarily because it's milling an opponent. Does it mill you? I guess you could target yourself with it. That's why it's coming up. But Consider is a good option, right? It's just a cantrip that's going to put stuff into your yard, like potentially. That's a really good one. We got Fact, right? We definitely want the Surveillance. Brain Freeze actually might be good in this deck just as a card to mill you, which is weird. This is not a card that I would normally play for that reason, but it might actually be really good here because you know, you could cast this twice in the same turn with Iroh out, right? You can cast like one spell and then Brain Freeze yourself. That's going to mill 6. And then Brain Freeze yourself again with Flashback, and that's going to mill you another 9. So, you know, that mills you 15 cards. Like, maybe it's worth it. It could also be a win con, like in weird situations where you just like, there's a huge stack and you're like, all right, this person's at 5,000 life and like, I don't have a way to win commander damage, but bam, Brain Freeze you for 20 out of nowhere. And they're like, oh no. So, you know, one to consider, like just weird stuff like this that you might find. All right. Any other questions or things we didn't get to? I wish we had more time because, like, I feel like there's so much we didn't get to. But
just the final. So are there any like the categories of things I should look at, like broadly? So draw, ramp, maybe win cons. Are there any others like in that process that I should go through when
I think what we didn't look for, so let's, you know, switch over to types and tags, see what we found. So we found a lot of token makers, so we're, I think, in a good place with that, right? And we've got a decent amount of ramp. I'd like to add, like, get this up to maybe even 15 or 20 because it's just so important for this deck, right? So that's a place I'd look to bolster. Draw, definitely, we need more draw. And we have, you know, 10 cards to work with. We need more removal, we need more draw. We need more ramp. You know, we maybe don't need more ramp because look at all this cost reduction. This
True.
could certainly help here, and same with treasure. Um, but the places that you certainly need more oomph are here, and I think wheels are definitely going to be one that's important for this build, because I know you asked that earlier and I didn't really answer you, but I think decks where I want to run, you know, let me ask you this, like, what's the danger of a wheel?
You refill the opponent's hands, and so if they get, potentially 21 cards,
Yep.
they might draw into an answer
Mm-hmm.
to, or there's a good chance one of them could potentially draw in an answer to what you're trying to do. And
Exactly.
also if they have graveyard synergies, then you're
Yep.
helping them as well.
And then like the biggest the biggest question about like should I play a wheel or not is, can I get my hand size low enough that it's going to be advantaging me more than opponents, I guess, is what I think. And you know, the more powerful your deck is, the better wheels are, because when you're playing fast mana, it makes it really easy to like unload your hand. Like imagine an extreme example where you're playing like Chrome Mox Diamond, these spells that like just destroy your hand all in the name of more mana, right? Rituals are a good example. Seething
Yeah, so
Song.
they're like very good in my Ashling Flame Dancer deck.
Exactly.
Firehouse
Like
and
if you have
Windstorm.
ways to unload your hand really fast, and you know what unloads your hand really fast? A bunch of ramp spells. You know,
Yeah,
like you're playing turn 2 Farseek, turn 3 Skyshroud Claim, like all of a sudden you have so much more mana than everyone. The only problem in that situation is you run out of cards. So then all of a sudden, if you're way ahead of everyone on mana, wheels become insane, because now everyone else didn't get a chance to play the stuff that they wanted to play like from the beginning of the game, and you're like, okay, everyone look at a new hand, you know? So I think we definitely want wheels in this deck, to answer your question, because the only problem with wheels is if you're not ramping enough to make them like more advantageous to you than to opponents. And
yeah,
since we're playing green, that is much less of a concern. And it also means that you might want to consider like ultra fast mana sources, stuff like Elvish Spirit Guide. Do you know this card? And Simian
yes, where
Spirit
you
Guide,
run the card
which
and
is, it's
get a
basically
green
a green
card.
lotus petal, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And lotus petal. If you're running a bunch of wheels, these cards become extra good. They're already really good. And, you know, I'm not necessarily saying you should run these, but it's certainly something to consider, especially if you're adding a bunch of wheels.
yeah,
And then
makes sense.
the only thing we didn't get to in terms of major categories that I'm seeing like missing, I mean, we got these counters naturally, but Anthem and Pump stuff, like this, you know, how do we win? We didn't ever really get to that. So I think
Yeah,
that's what's left. And the classic answer is like, you're making a bunch of creatures. Like, you know, what does
like a
that
Crater
make you
Hoof
think of?
style.
Exactly. So like, I don't know if we're going to play Crater Hoof, because that's not really what you want to be doing, but at least it's going to give us the tag that we need, which is probably this Overrun, or Power Boost to All could be good. If we don't know which one to use, why not use both with an or, right? O-tag Overrun or O-tag Power Boost to All. That's what it was, right? Power Boost to All. Yeah. Now, if it's giving us stuff that we don't want to see, like creatures, blah, 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 we'll add the type instant or type sorcery, right? Because that's what we want. Finale of Devastation. Probably a really good card in this deck. This one, maybe not. Cares about power, not necessarily what we want to be doing. This card's going to be extremely good, but, you know, up to you whether you want to play it. It's kind of nasty. I'll put it in considering, because I don't advocate playing it.
Should we put extra combats, do you think, in this deck? Or
Probably not. I think, like, there are enough pump effects in these colors that, and you know, extra combats really benefit stuff with attack triggers, We're not going to really have
Yeah.
that, right?
Yeah.
So like the question then is like, why play an extra combat versus just playing something that buffs the power? And
Yeah. Yeah.
if
Makes
there's a
sense.
good answer to that question, then sure, like play the extra combat. But I think in general, we're gonna have more oomph by playing a card like this, which looks sick in the deck. Like potentially
Yeah.
your
Very good.
board gets +1, has Storm, has buyback, which doesn't help us that much, but can be cast from the graveyard with Arrow. Like this seems cool in this deck. And then there may be some creatures. This is a card that I think you probably want in this deck, and also Mizzix's Mastery, which we didn't find, but like, you know, just good in Spellslinger. Cards that are just good in Spellslinger, right? At some point you want to remove this because you don't want to miss some really good stuff that we find. Like
Mm.
maybe we add type creature because I know that there are some good cards that we haven't added, like Balmor Battle Mage is one that I think is a really popular budget commander because it's just an uncommon that's a really good commander that does pretty much what you're trying to do with this deck, which is like buffs your team on any time you cast an instant or sorcery. In fact, he's probably in this list. Like, yeah, see, Balmor. He gives everything
Yeah.
+1 and trample. Like, this is a card you want on the deck that you want to hope to find. So take Balmor, add him to the tagger, find what we weren't finding before, and so on and so forth. Make sense? And then
Yeah. Yeah.
Perforos,
Makes
one
sense.
to consider, like depending on what route you go, that might not be how you want to win, but it's a way to win potentially. But Balmor is the kind of card you want. And even more than that, like an instant or sorcery that does that. So like, just take out the creature again and find, like, once you have the tokens, what is like one spell that really does it just exactly in the way you want? And it might be this. This card's really cool. It's 6 mana, so it's a little like all in, but it really can do big stuff. Now, the fact that it
Yeah.
like helps you flashback cards maybe means that we don't want it because our commander gives us a way to do that. But it also cares about how many creatures you're hitting with. So if you're really going wide, this card can be phenomenal.
Mm. Yeah.
So,
And maybe it provides redundancy for the commander as well.
yeah.
Given
And,
the threat it
like I
is.
said earlier, it's hard to know which of these is going to be the best without playing.
Yeah.
You kind of just have to go into it. I think, just to wrap up with my, like closing thoughts, my thought, and we didn't talk a lot about firebending, but like I think just, that's going to kind of work itself out. You're going to have a lot of instants by default. I wouldn't like focus too much on that. But I think the way this deck is going to win, Iroh is going to be not critical to, given what you've described that you want the deck to be like, I think Iroh is not completely essential to that plan because a
Yeah.
lot of what you're doing, he doesn't make the tokens, right? And he doesn't buff
Mm.
the tokens. So much of your plan doesn't rely on him. And I think that's a really good thing because it means
Yeah.
that he's a scary commander, but if someone's being nasty and wants to just shut him down repeatedly because they have PTSD from playing him last time, you can still win. And that
Yeah.
is a good feeling. It means like, okay, he's not like essential to my plan. I can win without him. Even though that's no fun, like you want to win with your commander, it's nice to know that you can if you have to.
Yeah. No, exactly. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Cool.
I think this is a very good, very good approach.
Good. Are you feeling like confident, like you can build this now? Like you've learned what you need to
Yeah.
learn?
Yeah.
Or
I definitely feel a
any
lot better about it.
any
Yeah. And
questions about
applying
like
it.
how to get started, or do you feel like based on what we've talked about and with this list as a starting point, you can get there?
Yeah, I think I can get there. Yeah,
Good.
I think I can get there, and then hopefully apply it to other decks as well. Because yeah, increasingly I feel like I want to try building decks that maybe have standard commanders, but building them in different ways. And
Yeah, and like knowing,
that was a big
how
struggle.
you approached this with me, which was like, I know all these red cards already, but I don't feel like I'm comfortable with anything else. None of that matters when you use these methods because you don't need
Yeah,
to know anything. You just need to find, find cards in the way we found them, which doesn't
mm,
require any knowledge, and then look up the tags, find similar decks, et cetera, et cetera. And as
yeah,
you do more and
exactly.
more of that, you'll be able to do less of that and come up with some of the stuff automatically instead. Or build out packages that say like, okay, when I'm playing a Spellslinger deck that includes blue, I always want these cards. When I'm playing a Spellslinger deck that includes red, I always want these cards. And then like the more shortcut stuff you can do like that, the easier it becomes. And like you don't want to rely so much on templates because that stifles some creativity, but it's always a good starting point that can save you a ton of time, even if you want to end up being more creative and finding more interesting things.
Yeah, absolutely. No, this is super useful, really. Yeah, really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course, anytime. Any other last questions, or you good to wrap up?
No, I think we're good to wrap up.
All right. Thanks, Dave. Have a great day.
All right, great. Thanks for your time. Catch you later.
By supporting me on Patreon, you help me toward my dream of quitting my day job and opening my own local game store. You can earn credits that you can use toward in-depth and detailed deck reviews, one-on-one coaching sessions, custom tokens, and more. Thanks for your consideration. I truly appreciate your support.